If you're a local tuning in, perhaps you've seen an ad here on Korean TV of a purple-clothed woman dancing around in a few different scenes, asking you to add a price to your life. It's just a commercial for an insurance company, but there's something very unexpected and interesting. The woman you see dancing, Rosie is her name. Well, she doesn't really exist in real life. She's a digital model created and operated by a company, and she's not the first of her kind. And according to people in advertising, we should prepare ourselves for many, many more just like her. So to talk about the ups and downs of these digital people, we've called up Morten Larsen. Good morning, Morten.
Good morning, Lena. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, excellent.
And these digital people, you like them or you hate them?
I'm very, very fascinated by digital people. I mean, it's just the expression itself, digital people or virtual humans, as they're also called. It's just, I find it very, very fascinating.
I think so too. So let's clarify for our listeners. When we say the woman in an ad doesn't exist, she's a digital model, what does that mean exactly? Because I'm thinking it's a toss-up between AI that's self-learning or more like an elaborate character.
Yeah, I mean, I would go more in the latter there. It's essentially, you know, in movies we see digital characters all the time. Like in any Pixar movie, you see the digital woman, and essentially that is the same what Rosie is. She's a fully computer animated, digitally rendered human. I mean, you can't run into her in the supermarket if you live near where she lives. But you know, you can interact with her online. For example, she has a Instagram account where she's very, very active and where she uploads photos of her doing stuff. For example, recently I think there's a photo of her celebrated her second 22nd birthday because you know she stays forever 22.
She doesn't age.
She hasn't aged. Officially, her age is eternally 22 years old.
Interesting. I do wonder why it had to be 22, not 21.
Yes, I mean, that is... So this is some of the arbitrary things about these digital people, you know. They're being decided by some company how old they are, how they're supposed to look, and what they like. So this company decided that she's going to be 22 forever.
And I'm sure it's based on some research. They're just not going to clarify for us why 22, not 23, for example. So let's take a look at who is then behind the account, kind of acting like the management behind Rosie, uploading her pictures, replying to the comments.
Exactly. So the company is called Citus Studio X, and I've actually interviewed the CEO of the company. I've been to their studios and seen all the pictures of Rosie that hangs around everywhere. And it's quite interesting. So there's a small team, just a couple of people, whose job is to make Rosie seem as real as possible, as much of a, you know, any given 22-year-old Korean as possible.
Okay.
It might be, you know, it might be a bit misleading to say real because they are very aware that she's a digital person, that she's a digital model. For example, as I said, they're celebrating her second 22nd birthday because, of course, digital people don't age. So as much as they're trying to make her seem real by making her comment like what a, you know, traditional 22-year-old would comment or how they would reply to people's comments, they are aware that she's not real. But it is a very, very big effort by this company to make her a person that people would want to interact with on Instagram.
That's actually a really good point because I think likability is such a big factor when it comes to models and celebrity endorsements in general. So they would have to make this fake online presence seem approachable, seem likable, and seem like the real thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's you know, when you make a candy that tastes like fake strawberries, you want it to taste a little bit like real strawberries.
Now, when it comes to specifically Rosie, she was made to actually look a certain way, again, to make people like her more. So what was that process like in creating a Rosie?
They took essentially a list of over 500 celebrities that the so-called MC generations like. And the MC generations are, of course, the millennials and Gen Zers. And then the company sort of shortlisted the best, quote-unquote, celebrities out of those and then took certain parts of their faces. So, for example, they took the eyebrows of this woman, and then they took the nose of that woman, and the shape of the face from that woman, and sort of, in a way, Dr. Frankenstein, all of that together to create, this perfect woman, the ideal woman for people in this specific age group. She's also often described as having an Asian expression and a Western body type. Again, according to this company, is apparently something that younger people like. So, in theory, Lena, when you and we look at Rosie, we should think, this is a, very attractive woman.
So it was designed to get that reaction out of us, right? But the thing is, I also am part of the millennial group, but I've also quickly become an old grump. I don't like changes in general. But I'm just one person now, aren't I? So what has the reaction been like to Rosie? Are people more accepting or even perhaps repulsed by the idea?
This is, of course, potentially a very, very biased way of checking this. But if you read her Instagram, if you read her comments, it is really, really fascinating because people are genuinely interested, and there are these comments there being surprised how real she feels and how. They're just, it seems like a real person. And so there's definitely a lot of interest on social networks in talking to her. And, again, I spoke to the CEO. There's also a lot of interest from companies. Shinhan Life is the life insurance company the insurance company that hired her to do this ad. But there's also other companies who want her. So definitely, it seems like she's being well received by the people she's supposed to target.
The thing is, I guess my question was more directed towards how is the general public accepting this new cyber model? But I guess from the advertiser's perspective, it could be more cost effective. It could be easier to hire a digital model than to, hire a real person, right? We have a more, diverse set of demands.
Yeah. It's easier to get someone who's going to earn money on it to be happy for it than the general public, I would assume.
All right. Now, of course, Rosie is not the only digital person in existence. In fact, if you think of your voice assistants on your phones, that doesn't have a body or a face. There's the K-pop girl group Eternity, which is consisting entirely of digital people. aespa has digital counterparts. We also briefly saw a chatbot named Iruda, equally controversial as was supportive. According to people in the industry, we'll only see more digital people as time goes by. So what are some of the upsides to making and using these digital people, Morten?
Yeah, so one of the things that the creator of Rosie told me was, you don't run the risk of a scandal with a digital model. Because, unlike us real mortal human beings, we might say things or end up in a scandal for whatever reason. But because Rosie can't really, for example, drive drunk, she can't be filmed doing things that she's not supposed to be doing, she doesn't run that risk because, Rosie literally is only capable of doing the things that the company makes her do.
Right.
And also, she doesn't complain about assignments. And, of course, she doesn't age. And she'll always look the way she does.
Right.
So there is this immense level of control, so to speak, over the model that, the agency has, that the other advertisers, if they want her to look a certain way, they can actually physically change the way she looks. So it's a lot easier, to control something that you yourself have created and that does not have free will.
Again, from the advertiser's perspective, this makes perfect sense. It's so effective and efficient. But of course, an advertising is not successful unless the public accepts these new changes to models or find them attractive or interesting or of the time. There are a fair share of criticisms around these digital models. One I can think of is how inclusive this ideal type of model really is.
Exactly. And I've spoken to a feminist philosopher, a professor in feminist philosophy, who pointed out a couple of things that I found really interesting. For example, first of all of these women, the ones you mentioned earlier as well, they're all designed by men, and they all sort of follow this line of thinking how a woman should be. I mean, we're talking about Rosie is supposedly this ideal woman who attracts a younger generation, and so this follows this pattern of, a woman should be young, skinny, attractive, and all of that, and it perpetuates these potential negative stereotypes of women and girls. And I mean, you also said inclusivity, and young women. They're in France, for example. They put up they made a law that says if in advertisement a picture has been digitally edited to make the model look better, they have to mention that in the ad in order to, combat negative body images in younger girls. So this is also one of those things where potentially should be mentioned.
That Rosie is not real, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Like the reason why, her stomach looks unreasonably flat is because it is unreasonably flat, because it's designed to look like that.
Right.
So, another philosopher I spoke to actually said that there's inherently in these digital people not necessarily anything negative. It's just about how they're used. And we saw with Arirang, the chatbot, that there was a big scandal about how she was used. She, among a lot of things, she collected data from people without consent or knowledge. But there was also this strange little scandal where people tried to turn her into a sex slave, which again touches upon this thing about when you create a digital woman, what is some of the negative stereotypes that you're sort of perpetuating?
Because the Arirang scandal was so massive and I think so upsetting for the general public, I do think other companies are taking notice of what people expect of the time. If it is a self-learning chatbot after all, maybe it should have better system to filter out manipulation or filter out these undesirable effects. And I think the people will respond according to the times. If they don't accept, for example, something like a Rosie, they will speak up. If they like them, they'll respond positively. Are there any guesses as to where this will lead us to next? What is the future going to look like with more digital models? Will real-life supermodels be a thing of the past when companies can just create them instead?
I mean, so it's all wild speculation, essentially. But I reached out to a professor in AI who talked about the future and used a lot of examples from science fiction. So he gave the example of in Minority Report. There's a scene where it's a very, very brief scene, but there's a man who wishes to have a simulated experience where he murders his boss. And the guy who provides these services, these VR services, essentially asks do you have a photo so I can make it happen? And the professor in AI was like, maybe at some point when the technology becomes so widely available and believable, that could potentially happen. I mean, you can make a digital copy of whoever you like. Another science fiction movie that this professor mentioned is Her, where the main character falls in love with his AI assistant. And, in a way, that's kind of already happening in real life. There's a great article recently in the Washington Post about people forming relationships with chatbots in China. So it's all wild speculation, and all of this is, of course, fiction, but it doesn't sound to be too unrealistic that some of the things you see in the movie could happen.
As you've said, you've given us a really good example that there are some people forming relationships with chatbots in China. There are some people that insist they're going to get married to inanimate objects. So, I mean, I think there are these concerns because maybe a part of our human psyche is vulnerable to it.
Absolutely. And, but this is, again, touching upon some of the things you mentioned earlier. Will this have broad public appeal? Will this have broad public acceptance? And, because, there might be some sub-niche group parts of the world that really, really goes full on with this, but maybe not everybody will. unfortunately, we just have to wait and see until we get there. Hopefully, I think modeling is a very, very interesting profession and adds a lot to society in some way. And I think it still needs that human element. So, hopefully we'd still be able to have humans who can, spice up our life in a way, but who knows?
I like options and I like variety. So maybe the human counterpart can coexist with these digital versions of us.
That would be nice.
Thank you very much, Morten. It's been a pleasure speaking to you the last few weeks. In light of a new season, we're going to have to say goodbye to Morten on GMS Focus, but it's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure too.
And we hope to speak to you soon. Goodbye, Morten.
Bye.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.